Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So this is Thanksgiving. You don't need to say Happy Thanksgiving when I probably put this video up today. Here, I'm kind of taking a day off, but I was reading the Preceptor book, and I knew this was coming, and so I wanted to do it because I'm at the particular point in the book. There are two techniques for deeper level cleaning that you can do, right? And I'm going to describe I'm going to read the part about cleaning first, the normal cleaning, and then get into these other two things that are there. And coming straight from the masters of the system, which is important. And I want to say that these things, and Chargie's going to say it himself, I'm going to read what he says, but Sahaj Marg has a discipline aspect to it. And part of it is you're just supposed to do what you're told. And again, in Sahaj Marg, there's no orders. These are all suggestions, but you have freedom of choice to do them any way you choose, or to deviate, or bring in other things and mix things with it, which is so prevalent in the New Age community. I think you know more than the system of the masters themselves. And part of this is just doing it the way it's you're told to do it, like having some faith and using the techniques and in a way that they're prescribed. Right? There's a prescription here. It's a system. And the people who are putting the system out are more knowledgeable than you are on the subject matter, or you'd be teaching them, right? So there's a lot of this in America, and a lot of it in the New Age community. Americans have difficulty with authority. When you go to play for a coach, and the coach has to kind of win the team over to whatever extent, and put you in a position to be successful. And you're going to have to sacrifice. Like, you're going to have to sacrifice some of the things that you might be able to do. You might want to shoot more in a basketball game, or you might want to get more targets as a receiver in football or something, or you might want to go for more interceptions as a football, defensive player or something, more steals, but it leaves your defense more vulnerable. Like, you might get an interception, but they might score 2 touchdowns because you were going for interceptions, you bid on a fake, and they get behind you or they have big plays, right? So you have to sacrifice some of the things that you want to do, some of the ways that you want to play, and adjust to the system. And if you win, well, you feel successful, right? And if there's some success there, but even then, people get jealous, and there's all these egos involved. There's all that kind of shit, right? Same thing with teachers. Same thing with anything in life. You follow the instructions, and if it doesn't work, you abandon it because you don't feel that there's success. But in the spiritual world, sometimes the success is not perceivable. You're not able to perceive the success, right? You're not able to enjoy it on a physical level. It's too subtle, and it's too, you're not sensitive enough, or it's something that takes a longer time to open up. And so you have to have more faith in something like that. But if you think you know more and you start mixing things, that can be very dangerous in the sense of, and I'm not, using fear here, I'm just saying it can be very dangerous because it happens on a spiritual level. It's much worse than the material level. So if you think on the material level, the worst thing that you can happen is you suffer pain, or you die, or, you have a problem, and, it's limited to this life, right? Maybe you carry some scars over to the next life, but that's spiritual. That's your spiritual aspect of something. But on the physical level, everything is limited to this life, and you have a do-over. You die, and then you come back into life. You screw up this life, whatever. You get trust issues. People break your heart, right? You get abused. You're traumatized. I mean, those things also have spiritual affects, or spiritual effects, not affects. And those things you take with you. And there's ways that you can follow the wrong guru, or follow the wrong system, and it does damage to your system. And so Babaji found that there was a person who did in a previous life a mantra, and the mantra created grossness in the person's system, and they repeated it over and over again, making the grossness heavier, where Babaji felt it was almost impossible to remove, right? Because the person was doing a spiritual practice that some stupid guru gave him in a past life, and it did it to such an extent that it caused damage instead of help them spiritually. He had a number of abhyasis that came with these difficulties. He had one person, when Babaji closed his eyes, there was a monkey sitting there. When he opened his eyes, it was a person. And he kept on like closing his eyes and opening them. He couldn't figure out what's going on. And he read the person's samskara, and they were a Hanuman worshiper in a past life. And they were so attached to Hanuman, it created this monkey-like connection on a spiritual level that had to be cleaned off, right? And so there are lots of examples of this. Now, when I first started Sahaj Marg, there was an ashram that did hatha yoga. And the guru started to sleep, it was like an old guy, started to sleep with some of the students. And then there was all this, my roommate at the time, she lived in a shared house, and there's a guy who was a, mechanic, but he was a kind of a new agey person, but a nice guy, neat guy. And he told me he had gone to the ashram. He said it was charged with sexual energy. Like he was saying that, there was just something off about them. He had been there like a year before. It was a big scandal. And, Charji addressed these types of things and said that there's, these lower chakras that are on the spine that Sahaj Marg doesn't really attend to because they're power points. And one of them controls your appetites. There's, of course, the Kundalini, and I forget all the different names of these chakras. But the one that controls your sexual appetites, if a guru with some energy and some power and some spiritual attainment uses their energy, stimulates these chakras, it can turn a person into like a deviant type of person, sexually or whatever else. And there's also problems with the Kundalini. Like the Kundalini has been awoken in people. If you talk to people in the New Age community, about 1/3 of them will say they've had their Kundalini opened because some person's bullshitted them into believing that. But there's so much power, and this is all power for the material world, in these points. And the Kundalini it goes up the spine. So it's like this, they open the Kundalini, this energy travels up a person's spine, and it hits these points, these lower points, the point that's in charge of your sexual energy, that's the point that's in charge of your gut and your appetites. And the person will get, just gross and it'll affect them in some way because they haven't been properly cleaned and they're not properly, disciplined. They're not ready for this kind of activity. And so there are things to be wary of in the spiritual field, and accepting the wrong guru just because you want a guru, like you say, oh, Daji sucks, so I'll go find somebody else. Yeah, that would be good if there wasn't a lot of shitty gurus out there, people who are scammers, or lots of people are good at articulating spiritual philosophy, and they can read books and understand the books. Maybe they had some lives as a saint in some past lives or a guru. Maybe they have a little bit going on, but they're still very materialistic, and they're not really spiritual. They're dabblers, like so many of us, and they like being a guru, and they have some of this energy, but they're not, they don't know how to use it, and they impress people with their knowledge, and they really screw people up. And there was a guy, big, really big guy with like 300, 400 pounds, probably about my height, maybe a little taller. And the guy had a good personality. He was from the South. He got into it with Mr. P, who was also from the South. They got into some arguments. The guy eventually left, which he shouldn't have. But the guy, he went to some ashram, and they did some spiritual damage to him. And he was having all kinds of health issues, and like he was having like psychic problems. Like he wasn't really able to function. He gained a lot of weight because his chakras got messed up, and whatever it was. And Charji was able to fix him, right? And Charji said it's a miracle the guy's still alive after what happened. And a lot of spiritual damage was done to him. And Charji himself went to some guru before Babaji, and he meditated, and something happened to him where he developed the fear of being alone, right? Like a phobia. Like it's, it was, I think it was pretty much minimized by Babaji, but it was something that negatively affected him for a long period of time. And so these are the things to be wary of. Like people, channeling's great, but you have to make sure you're channeling a higher developed being. And so people who jump into these New Age practices and they go to these seminars, and there's all these pseudo gurus. There's people who they go to India and they meet a guru, and they come back. There's a woman who was in New Mexico, a white woman who, the guru said to her, "You are that." And she wrote a book about that and she had her own little following. She had a little bit of energy. I had a different person I lived with, another housemate that had gone over to that place. I lived in a shared house when I was in New Mexico for a little bit. And the guy who was subletting to me said that he had gone to her, and she had some spiritual energy. She had some charisma. But, she wasn't really a guru. She was like a woman who had a couple of spiritual experiences and decided, I'm going to be a guru, right? And went to Santa Fe, and there's all these people that are into these things. Like you can, throw a stone in Santa Fe and hit one of these fake gurus. Like, they have all these people, these New Age people. And, they might have a little bit going on, and they might be able to impress you. It's like when people say to me, you're a master, they start calling me master. I'm like, no, you don't even know what a master is. Like, if you did, you wouldn't be calling me that. Like, you would see that I'm just, I have some spiritual knowledge, and I have some, all of it given to me by the Sahaj Marg system. But I'm aware of all these things, and I'm aware of the pitfalls, and I'm aware of the way the ego can, see things. The ego is always at risk to see things in a self-serving way and to distort reality. And when you mix that with spiritual energy and then some of these spiritual points and things, you just don't want to fuck around with that. So, in all these things, these are spiritual disciplines, right? And so when I read these things to you, they're, doing them the way that you're told to do them and not mixing other things, not mixing Reiki or some of these. I mean, Reiki, I guess, may be a little bit different because it's a healing thing, but, at least some of these other yogic practices and things, anything that moves energy, it conflicts with the subtleness of the Pranhuiti and the Sahaj Marg system that we do in Gratefulness meditation. So without further ado, let me read these things to you. So again, the microphone's on my chest, so there's always a little bit different audio here. So it starts off here. For the use, this is the dark, bolded stuff that's from Babaji. For the use of the Abhyasis in their daily sadhana, cleaning is an extremely important part of the sadhana. And then Charji said, this shows that the preceding techniques which I have just given to you are for only preceptors. Under no circumstances are they be told to the Abhyasis, or they encouraged to use them. This is total ban on such practice. Now comes the cleaning for Abhyasis by themselves. So these are the techniques that you could share with Abhyasis. And the first one is the one that everyone gets. Cleaning is an extremely important part of the sadhana. My master has recommended the following processes for use of Abhyasis. Again, that's from Babaji. Daily use in their daily work. Think of that all the impurities are going out of your back in the form of smoke and vapor. And Charji says this. This is a very important part. I think that I've been neglected in the past even by me in talking to you, assuming that everybody knows, you see. But suddenly found that I went through my notes and I have not spoken about this to you in the past, nor have I written to anybody about it. So let me read this again with that in mind. That just was something that Charji wrote there, which is important because, this was neglected by him for some reason. Daily use, think that all the impurities are going off your back in the form of smoke or vapor, and think that all the impurities are going out of your back in the form of smoke and vapor, and he put this in capital letter, and that in its place the sacred current of the divine entering into your heart from the master's heart. Now, of course, we're talking about the divine master here because there's no living master, but either way, it's always the divine master. So you can think about it as God, whatever it is, right? But that this transmission that you receive in these sittings is coming to you as something is leaving, right? Like something is being cleaned out and there needs to be something put in its place. And so you want God's love. You want the divinity that comes with the Sahaj Marg Pranhuiti, the energy that is transmitted in the sittings. And then Charji said, I apologize for this omission in the past. Perhaps this is why many cases of progress he uses the R word, is ard or stopped. Because when something goes, something must take its place. So we imagine the grossness, or the Abhyasi imagines the grossness is going out of his heart from behind in the form of smoke or vapor. Also imagine, he should imagine, or she should imagine, the Abhyasi should imagine that something is coming in its place from in front, and that is the master's grace from the master's heart to replace the grossness that has gone out. Please remember this. I repeat again, I apologize for my omission of this very important thing. I cannot understand how I did not mention it, but there it is. And the R word here is, something that is stifled. And so we use the R word in that sense, like your development is R, it is stifled. And so that's the one that everyone should do. That's part of the practice, a half hour at night when you're done with your work or before bed or whatever it is, right? If you fall asleep doing it, whatever. These are things that happen, but you're using your will and you're pushing all the day's impressions off your back in the form of smoke and vapors, and that this divine current, this sacred current is flowing into your heart to fill the void, the vacuum, the empty space that was previously occupied by the grossness. And so you're cleaning out what you don't want to have in there, and you're filling it up with the divine energy, the love that's the pure essence of God. And so here are some of the other techniques. Again, he's going to say this here. In special cases only when advised, these are special techniques to be advised to Abhyasi. So the part that's from Babaji is in special cases only when advised to do so. And then Charji write, there are special techniques to be advised to Abhyasis under circumstance in which you think they may be useful, beneficial to the Abhyasi. So let me say something here why I am choosing to share these with you. Is because we don't have, you guys don't have preceptors, and you don't have the world's engrossed state, and, we have whatever the debacle is with Daji. And so we live in a time where people are feeling, creating spiritual grossness. We live in a time where people are spending so much time on the internet and creating deeper impressions and don't have the ability to get these deep cleanings. Of course, we have these things available to us now in the Gratefullness Meditation YouTube channel, that you're watching now. You can get the 3 sittings in one day. You can get the 3 introductory sittings. I also am under the idea that, when people who many of you who've started Heartfulness under Daji and his preceptors, or maybe used Daji's videos, and, they worked and the preceptor worked, because there's always, if they're doing it right, if there's, even when they're not doing it right, a divine essence is there. The divine essence of the divine master comes to the people through the preceptor. Even if the preceptor sucks or isn't doing a good job, there is some sort of oversight with divine beings that, utilize the physicality of the preceptor to do this divine work. And, the master himself, right? There were times that Babaji would comment to people on work that they did that he wasn't present for. Like preceptors who had done work, and Babaji spoke about their work and said, this is, it was correcting them possibly in a gentle way. But he was aware of their work even though he wasn't physically with them. Like he knew what was going on in the sitting more than they did, even though he was not even aware of the sitting. It was happening halfway across the globe. And so there's oversight into this, not only by the living master, of course we don't have one now, but also by these etheric beings, and also by a person's soul, the soul of the preceptor and the soul of the Abhyasi, that all want this thing to go in a perfect direction, right? But because of us missing out on some of these things and, people accumulating grossness, these are techniques for deeper level cleaning if you are, needing to do these things, right? Again, there is a discipline here, and they have to be done in the spirit in which they're attended. The intention is there. There's a lot of people with some mental issues that end up being spiritual people, spirituality and some, Babaji even talked about having divine madness himself. And, people get imaginative and they think of themselves in ways, their egos get a distorted view of what's going on. But remembering, just do the things the way that they're told to do them, right? It's not hard. And if you're embellishing, if you think you know more, just, say, well, this is, watch this video again and think about it in that sense, right? So do the normal cleaning if you're doing this practice. I mean, it's up to you. It's your choice. There's no meditation police, but if you're trying to, do this work, if you're wanting this to be successful, you do the cleaning. It's one of the most important things just because of the nature of humanity. So they're there to deal with the problem of grossness, but you also don't want to be obsessed with the grossness. Charji made fun of people coming up to him saying, they'd come up to me saying, clean me, right? And Babaji said, there's a contagium of grossness which I have created by talking about it. And Abhyasis all think of themselves as dirty, and that's not what it is, right? They don't think of yourself as dirty. They think of if there's something there that needs to be cleaned, just like anything else, you go out and you work in the garden or something, you go out and do something physical, and you get, some dirt on you, and you go and take a shower and it comes off, and it's just that simple. You don't get obsessed with it. You don't want to be obsessive compulsive about it. You're never going to be perfectly clean or whatever. There always have to be some samskaras, or you would leave your body. The samskaras keep your soul in your body. So there has to be some of them. And even the masters of the system has some samskaras. So there's no, thought of being dirty, but there is grossness that needs to be cleaned. And if you're not being able to meditate well, you feel like there's stuff that's, you feel restless, you feel like there's things that are blocking your meditative process, then yeah, there are these techniques. So doing the half-hour cleaning every night, you can always do 5 minutes of cleaning using the same process. And then here are these other 2 techniques that are, given in the description that I'm about to read to you. In special cases, only when advised to do so, that's Babaji. These are special techniques, this is Charji. These are special techniques to be advised to the Abhyasi under circumstances which the Abhyasi, in which you think the Abhyasi will be useful to the Abhyasi, because you think they will be beneficial to the Abhyasi. Imagine the divine light is present at the top of your head. This again is Babaji. Imagine the divine light is present at the top of your head, and that is connection to the eternal divine store. And so that means that there's an infinite amount of divine light. You see that there's no use in having a lamp which has no connection. Charji wrote that. Using your will, draw some of the divine light downwards and allow it to pass gently through your left arm, taking out the impurities in the heart with it. And so I generally do this. Even a preceptor, I have adopted this. It's useful. You imagine the divine light in your head. There's a point at the top of your head, right? Like a big point there. A spiritual point connected to the divine source. Mentally draw it through this point, like this, through the heart and out through the left arm. You have to do it gently, and not just like this, gently. Then repeat the process with your right arm. You see, taking all of the impurities. You must make the thought that all this is being cleaned out by this power. Imagine it to go through the fingers of your left hand, through the fingertips. Repeat the process, the same process, using your right arm. Thereafter, the process is to be repeated. Imagine that divine light is going through and down or out through your left side of your torso, right down through the right leg, right down through the left leg, and then out through the toes, and then through the right side. Repeat it with the right side of the body. And so he says this is one cycle of cleaning. Normally it is enough, even if Abhyasis, to do himself or herself. If you employ it occasionally as a preceptor, it is permitted. Do it very gently, the cycle of the 4 operations, left arm, right arm, through the torso, left leg, through the torso, right leg, should normally take about 10 minutes. Okay, so he's saying there it should take about 2 minutes and 30 seconds per the 4 actions, right? 10 minutes divided by 4 is 2.5, so 2.5 minutes. And, it's very easy to just think divine light's flowing from the top of your head and then going out your left arm and your fingertips. So that would take about 10 seconds. So what you're doing is to slow the process down, and you have this idea that there's divine light in the top of your head, and it's going through the various Sahaj Marg yatra points. And if I forget to put the, you can look up the Sahaj Marg yatra points, or they have pictures of it in Heartfulness. It's in the Reality at Dawn. It's in one of the books, the Babaji books, I believe, Reality at Dawn. If not, you can find Babaji's 5 books online. But I will, I'll hopefully remember to put these points and show you these images of the various points in the head and the various points. There's 4 points in the heart. And so you would have the light going through, and you're not focusing on the points, but just that this light is slowly being drawn down, this divine light. And you have to have the idea, it's that this is infinite amount of light. That this is not something where it's, that you can use up all the light, right? It's something that's finite. It's like there's this infinite store of divine light, and you're drawing that light down to the top of your head. You can imagine it going through your brain and all these various places, down your throat, your chest, and through all these spiritual points, through all these spiritual points in your head. You know, you're not concentrating on them, but that the light's going through and it's collecting and pushing all the grossness down, right? So the light's coming in and the grossness is being pushed out of the body. And you go through all these spiritual points and then up through your shoulder, you know, the 4 heart points, and then up through the shoulder and then down your arm and then out through your fingertips. And then you would do the same thing on the right side. And then the second wave with the last two, you know, there's 4 different actions here. You bring it down through the top of your head, then down through your torso, then, you know, through your stomach and your waist and your, you know, all these different areas, all the way down through your back and these things, you know, your whole body is going through. And then it's going to go down your left leg, and then you're going to do the same thing and have it go down your right leg. So that would take longer, but you start feeling cleaner. So, you know, whatever it takes, it should take the whole thing around 10 minutes. That's what Chargie's saying. That you just don't have this thought, all this light's going through the top of my head, all the way through my body, out my toes. And that's it. That take 2 seconds, right? Like you're imagining this idea. You're like imagining, if you're not seeing the light, you're imagining this idea of the light going through. And you're concentrating as it moves downward. You're feeling it move through your body. I mean, this is, you know, how preceptors have to clean people. Like, this is one of the techniques, like he said, preceptors might employ this on somebody, right? They might clean a person in this way. You know, there's a reading of the situation, and, you know, there's different techniques that are given. But like he said, this was one of the techniques that he used to clean people. But again, it has to be done in a, you know, deliberate fashion, not overly quick. You know, it's just, and there should be some sense of, you know, after the first pass, feeling lighter, and, you know, your body's feeling more light, and these things. And so again, you know, it's a spiritual discipline, and not doing this every night, like substituting the normal cleaning for this. It'd be occasionally you would do this when you think there's more to be cleaned, or you feel led to do this, right? There has to be some, like, flow to it, some, you know, some divine intervention where the idea comes to you, oh, you know, I remember this cleaning. And you can refer to this video, come back and listen to it, and especially the parts, you know, you can bookmark the parts or timestamp the part or whatever it is that you do, and listen to this, you know, me describe this this practice. And if you're using it, every once in a while you should come back and listen to it, just like I'm rereading the preceptor book. Because there's always some detail you're going to forget. There's always some part of it you're like, oh yeah, I didn't remember that part, right? And so you might use this for a while. You get, you know, something that you feel is working for you, and then you go back and listen to it again, because it just has to be, you know, refreshed. It's getting a refresher just in case you're missing out on anything. And you're, you know, it helps build confidence to you remember what was said. Like when you read the words coming from the masters of the system, it builds confidence because there's sincerity in their, you know, the effectiveness and the fact that this stuff really works, and it's been tested and proven as a spiritual technique and something that you're, you know, working on, but you have to have some faith in and belief in. And it helps to like sort of give a boost to your belief and faith in it, because there's some sense of a spiritual authority, a spiritual master who is, you know, talking about it and prescribing it, right? All right, so let's go to the other one here. Okay, so it says here, the next technique, for those who require drastic cleaning. This is from Babaji again. It's just number 3. For those who require drastic cleaning. Now, I've done this where I felt just really gross and, you know, whatever it is, like just, you know, restless, and very effective. And, you know, I stopped doing it and I forgot exactly how to do it. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to get this book. Especially nowadays, you know, with everything, we're not having access to a preceptor. Point number 3. For those who require drastic cleaning, in capital letters, imagine, and it says this is to be told to the Abhyasi. Charji writes, after Babaji says imagine. Imagine that you are seated in the ocean of bliss, merged in it, merged inside it, and imagine the waves of the ocean are passing through your entire body, washing away all the grossness and impurities until you are able to perceive by yourself that your whole body has become crystal clear. It's almost like, you know, like you saw, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon of Wonder Woman where she had this invisible plane, where they would have an outline of a plane. Otherwise, she'd just be sitting in the sky, right? But it's almost like something like that, where your body, you have some reference to your physical being and your body and all these things. But it's like you're crystal clear. There's nothing in there. And so you imagine that you are seated in the ocean of bliss, merged with it, merged inside of it, like you're underwater. But this is divine energy. And imagine that the waves of the water are passing through your body, your entire body, washing away all the grossness and impurities until you're able to perceive by yourself that your whole body has become crystal clear, and also as a feeling that all this, stuff that you've been feeling is you know, is gone. Now, Chargy writes, now, very often, when this process was recommended by Babaji in the past, Abhyasis would start it and stop it because they found no change. But that was because they didn't give it sufficient time. So whenever you use this, it's only for drastic cleaning. Now, I would like to caution preceptors at this stage, reminding them with these techniques were withdrawn by Babaji, I think in 1972, maybe 1973, for the sole reason that preceptors, instead of themselves working, recommended these techniques to the Abhyasis, and everyone started experimenting with them, not using them as spiritual disciplines, which I referenced to in the beginning of this video. So this is a temptation, you see, whenever we are given techniques, there's a temptation to experiment, but preceptors are not expected to experiment. They are expected to do the work. So until you find in your reading that there is no need for drastic cleaning, because the Abhyasi is not benefiting by traditional cleaning, which I spoke about at first, then only it should be recommended for them. Then only should it be recommended for them. This technique is not to be used by preceptors at all. I mean on Abhyasis. They may do it upon themselves when they feel the need to do so. And so that's important, that a preceptor would not have this idea that the Abhyasis is sitting in an ocean of bliss, right? And like I had forgotten that. Like I wasn't using it, but I had forgotten that because I had forgotten how to use the whole thing. But I remembered the kind of basic idea of it, right? All of these processes is essential to apply the force of will. This is Babaji. In all these processes, it's essential to apply the force of will to throw out impurities and grossness out of the body and to end the cleaning with a feeling of confidence that the process has been sufficiently carried out and the system has been rid of its impurities. And so he says here, Charji, you see, here comes the need for faith and confidence in the application of the willpower. I think in Cormet's, that's where he did the first training that is now the book that you can get called What is Sahaj Marg? That was the first preceptor training. I had a discussion about meditation and cleaning. What is the basic difference? The basic difference is that in meditation, your mind is brought to the state of passivity, applied to a single object to promote or develop concentration, and there it rests. There is no question of willpower during meditation. In the cleaning, there is no meditation. There is only the application of our willpower used to remove grossness, impurities, complexities, progressively, stage by stage, initially upon the whole heart, when you don't have the capacity to read, when the reading capacity comes 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, like that. So that's stuff to do with the preceptors, right? So those are the two techniques. There is a third thing that I will give. I'll put this in a playlist, and there's a third thing to do with people who are, have an obsession or have like a sexual addiction, or, just want to curb some of their sexual thoughts and things like this, right? Sexual urges. And so there is a special technique that's given. I'll read that in the book. It was brought back by Daji when Daji became the master of the system. I mean, it had been there for a while, but he made it more public. And then he just, he moved away from all of this kind of stuff and started doing his own, whatever he's doing. But these are the two techniques which you can use as, there's the three techniques here. There's the prescribed way that the cleaning's been done, which I covered in past videos, and it's in various books and things, and then on the Sahaj Marg website. There is the one where you imagine that this divine store of light, this light is coming into your head, and you pull the light through the various limbs of your body, cleaning all the spiritual points and the grossness out as you do it, which was described, of course, sitting in the ocean of bliss and imagining that the waves of the ocean are flowing through you and cleaning you. And this is done when you're really feeling, extra grossness. But of course, you can do the 3 sittings in 3 days. There are times where you just go through something. And no matter how many sittings you get, or you might feel temporary relief, but there's levels of restlessness and frustration. And even when you're moving through the spiritual points, each point has 4 different conditions, and one of them is restlessness. And restlessness is necessary because it gives you motivation to move to the next point. There are spiritual places and points in your body that are so blissful, your etheric body, that if you get in touch with those spiritual conditions, you don't want to leave them. And there are people who thought that they had, merged into God because it felt so great, and they were on a lower level of spiritual attainment, and they stopped there and they refused to proceed because they just felt happy and great all the time, and there was just this bliss. And so the restlessness is to combat that sort of thing, that you're eager and restless to move on to the next stage, right? So it's not that restlessness is necessarily bad. It often comes before you go through a big cleaning or a big sitting, and you're preparing for something, or you're moving through some sort of spiritual point or something or other, whatever it is. And so, it's just to be viewed as temporary. But there are times that some deep samskara comes up, or just things are being cleaned out, and you're going through a lot of stuff. You're in a traumatic situation. You're overwhelmed by your life. You're going through something. This could be happening in the near future in a World War III type situation, or whatever it is, where you are just upset a lot, and you're stressed out, and you're feeling things inside of you. And when you go to meditate, you're just too sped up, and you can't settle down into your meditation. And so these techniques are necessary. And it might not, work 1, 2, 3 times, 10 times. You might do it every day. You might do it multiple times a day. But at some point, like this one where you're sitting in this, the ocean of bliss, and the water's flowing through you, eventually, from my own experience, it works. And of course, using the sittings, the 3 sittings a day that I've put on this channel, these playlists. And then there's the 3 introductory sittings that are done in 3 consecutive days. And just to redo that, like if you don't feel like your practice is going well, and maybe you took some breaks, like you did it for a little bit and you stopped, or maybe you were started by a preceptor that you're not so sure about, or something like that, or you did it with Daji on his, Daji had a great Udemy page, but I don't know if it works anymore, right? Like he had this thing where he gave 5 sittings and various talks, and like he did a good job. It's the best thing he did. Like I thought he did an excellent job with that. But of course now everything that he's done has been compromised. And so, these 3 sittings and 3 consecutive days, there's a playlist for it. And it just starts your whole practice. It's these initial sittings that you get to be initiated into the system, to be introduced into the system. And so all these things exist here on this YouTube channel as much as possible. And some of these books are there. You can find them. Some of them are available online. Some of them are like on eBay and, other places, like some of the primary books and things. And, people, it's a lot tougher now. Like it just is. I've talked about this so much. It's not as good as when I started, unfortunately. But there's a lot more people that are waking up and wanting to be spiritual. They're craving it without even knowing it, because it's, a time where it's more available. So the system, the organization isn't as good. And, having people that can help you with it, and going to preceptors' houses and meditating with other people and group meditation and things like that, and going to these gatherings that were so special and so great. Those things aren't available, but we're much closer to the end of our civilization, and so many things are being stirred up. And it's just easier to meditate and easier to connect to the divine source because it's the need of the time, right? So it's, like a good thing, right? It's something where, it's something's missing, something isn't like the way it was, but something else is taking its place, and everyone has to adjust themselves to this new way. And so if people have questions, you can leave questions in the comment section. Again, maybe re-listen to these things every once in a while. Let me know if you try these things, if they work. Again, they're not experimental. They're not just something to do because you feel like it. It would be because you feel like you need a little boost. You need a little bit more. You need something different because you're struggling to meditate or whatever it might be. And so, yeah, let me know how these things work for you. And again, doing them the way that they're prescribed is the best way to do them. And if you make deviations, well, then, you're running the risk of, at the very least, not working, and then, whatever else goes with that, right? And so, anyways, okay, so I was wrapping up this video. As you can tell, I was about to wrap it up. But as I was rendering it, I realized I needed to say something else. And this is like what I needed to do, right? Like some ideas came to me, and these are important ideas. That when in doubt, praying to God, opening yourself up and, asking God to show you what you need to do. Because he's saying that the preceptors should be guided whether Abhyasis need these techniques or not. And, I had already thought about when I came to these techniques that I would talk about them and read them because, there's something that might help people. And I have no idea what's going on with you. And, people leave comments about what's going on with them in their sittings. I just got a comment from some person who's, went to a preceptor who said she was struggling with her cleaning. And so, just the need of the day, I'm aware of things enough to know that people might need these things, and so whether to share them or not, well, there's not much risk in sharing them because they were supposed to be shared with Abhyasis. But a preceptor who had an Abhyasi would regularly come to their house and they would give him sittings, would have a better sense of that Abhyasi's inner condition, and the idea might come to them to recommend these things, right? And as you guys know, I don't recommend things, but I'm saying that these things are available. But it's up to you to figure out whether you need them or not and how to use them. And, this is developing a connection to the divinity within you and your soul. And everybody has this. There are times that your soul, through dreams or, just whatever it might be, is creating the need for you to change and give up something that's hurting you or do something that's going to help you and you're having trouble deciding something or whatever it is. And sometimes, very often people aren't able to listen to what's being communicated with them because everyone has it. Everyone gets these communications. So in using any of these techniques or doing any of these types of things, you're using the sittings that are there. Like one person was doing their individual practice by taking the individual sitting every day, and that's not appropriate. That's not how this is supposed to be used, right? Now, if you're going through something, you need lots of cleaning, sure, you can use the individual sittings, but they're not a substitute for your individual meditations where you're connecting to God directly and you're not experiencing an individual sitting. Like the way it used to go is when I started meditating, I would go and get an individual sitting on Tuesday because I was off Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I would go to group meditation on Sunday, and then there were times I would do the Friday night sitting that was at 9 p.m. that was just available to anybody wherever you were, that was done, without a preceptor. At times I would do that, not in the beginning. And then Wednesday I would go to group meditation at my preceptor's house. And there was a smaller group meditation on Wednesday and more people there on Sunday. And then I do my individual practice every day of meditating for an hour in the morning, preferably before sunrise. I worked late, so that wasn't always possible. And then doing my cleaning before I went to bed and doing the nighttime prayer and the 9 p.m. prayer, praying for everybody. So that was my personal practice. And I did it I was very regimented in my practice after I got married. Not so much because there was, things that got in the way of it. And I still wanted to do my practice, but I wasn't always able to do it the way I used to. And then over the years, I've gone back and forth. I used to read the literature. I was just doing my practice, reading the literature, writing in my diary, and going to work, and that was it. That was my whole life at that point, right? I was, when I initially started to do this, I didn't really have much of a social life. I wasn't playing basketball or doing many things. Occasionally I would do something else, but I spent the majority of my time doing my spiritual practice and or working. But over time, I just wasn't able to continue doing it to that level. Some people have trouble initially just adjusting to it and incorporating these practices into their life. And that's okay. You just have to work towards it, right? But you have to decide if it's for you. It's all about your choices because this cannot be forced on anybody. And so in terms of any of these things, there's a flow to it, and choosing the right thing and the right tool at the right moment. It's like you have a bunch of tools in your toolbox, whatever it is, right? And you have to pick out the right tool to use for the right, whatever you're using the tool for. You have to use the right tool for the problem that you have, the thing that you're trying to solve, the thing you're trying to fix, right? And so these are tools to be used, and you have to use them as prescribed, and with some sense of some connection to higher authority and having confidence that you're using them appropriately in the appropriate manner at the appropriate time. and using them in the best way that they can be effective for you, right? And incorporating them into your already existing spiritual practice. So these are just things to think about. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely point for the Apocalaughs. And the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.